Today I want to talk about things that are hard to hit in Warhammer 40k 8th edition. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and comment down below. Talking about this stuff and how we're getting ready for 8th edition has been really fun, and I appreciate everyone that's engaged so far. So there's different things. Flyers work a lot differently than they have in previous editions. Now there's a fly keyword, and in the main rulebook there's a very minimum amount of rules associated with the fly keyword. It basically says that some models have a minimum and a maximum move distance, and if you can't satisfy the minimum distance or you're forced to fly off the table, then the model counts as destroyed. There's no more going in ongoing reserves. Now the model is just simply removed and destroyed if it cannot satisfy that minimum condition. I'm not trying to scare you. There are things now, the rule and the flyer battle for rule is also different. Remember, there's now a fly force org slot and detachments that are specifically made to hold a lot of flyers. But now the fly keyword is applied to different things that don't necessarily just have wings. But some of the things that do have wings, like jets, have a rule on them called hard to hit. Now, in previous editions, what this did is you needed 6s to hit them as they were screeching across the battlefield. Now, that's not the case anymore. Now, your opponent subtracts 1 from their die roll when trying to target these guys in the shooting phase. So that is some amount of protection when you're dealing with a D6. Even 1 pip one way or the other is a decent amount of insurance, but it's no longer that needing 6s to hit anymore, which is radically different than we had before. And not all flyers, not all things with the fly keyword have that hard to hit special rule. This is only for things that kind of look like jets, but not everything. And I don't want to make this confusing, but things like Helldrakes don't have the hard to hit rule. Some things also have what's a rule called airborne, and this is kind of interesting because the game has made a big distinction between things that are supposed to spend all their time in the air and things that are supposed to kind of dive down and interact with the tabletop. So things like some of these jets have the airborne rule, where the airborne rule says that you cannot interact in the fight phase, the assault phase as we knew it before, with other models that don't have the fly rule. So things that have the fly rule, like a Helldrake, like even Space Marine Interceptors, like Hive Tyrants with wings and Bloodthirsters that have the fly rule, can interact with things that are moving around in the air, but only in that way. And then the things that are flying around the air, like a Storm Raven, can't assault, say, unit attack Marines or whatever while it's still flying, while it's not hovering. Anyway, the reason that I mention this stuff is that it's going to change things, and not everything has the same rules. The fly mechanic, the fly keyword, only has a very slim amount of rules in the main rulebook. Everything else has been spread out over the data slate in a way that I think has allowed the game designers to go creature by creature, model by model, and apply things that make sense to whatever the role is for that faction in the context of the overall list. You're not hanging a bunch of universal special rules on it that were just a package in the rulebook. I want to point out that the rulebook, the index of the rulebook, is very small because it only is telling you the base rules. You're only going to have to memorize a lot fewer pages than you had to do before. But the big takeaway to things that have the fly keyword is that sometimes they have a minimum and a maximum move. And if you can't satisfy that minimum, like I said, you are destroyed. So what I suggest doing is, on your tabletop, you can do this with no one else around, is practicing moving those minimum distances, because it's different. You had a little bit of safety before with just being able to go into ongoing reserves. You don't have that anymore. You leave the table with one of these figures, they are destroyed. And then some flyers, some things that can fly, have this hard to hit special rule. So what's hard to hit in 40k now? Not much. Your opponent's just subtracting 1 from their roll when they're trying to target these things in the shooting phase specifically. And then there's a rule that some really fast flyers have, the supersonic, that again limits their movement decisions even more. But that gets another flavor element that plays into, again, what the thing is supposed to do on the table. And I think this is also going to help us decide what we want to do with them on the table in our respective armies. So the big takeaways from this, the changes are the fly roll has its own rules, and then the flyer roll is different than it used to be. And then each flyer, each thing that does have these other roles, has keywords on the sheet that are going to tell you how they behave. Some of them are hard to hit, but not everything, and even they're nowhere near as hard to hit as they were before. But I'm not coming down on survivability of vehicles. These things now, with the toughness and the wounds and the armor save now, I think we're really going to get a lot more use out of our vehicle toys than we were getting before, which is exciting. Even though the major core rules have changed, I think things are going to behave a little bit more as we might expect them to do, even if we just read something about what we expect, or maybe even what the model looks like, and that's refreshing. And I'm looking forward to getting some of these things on the table, and I'm kind of looking forward to charging some Storm Ravens up right in the middle of units and maybe dumping them out, dumping things out next turn. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please comment. I want to hear how this is affecting how you're building your list. See you tomorrow.